Welcome to the Numisphere, a podcast diving into all things in the sphere of numismatics, talking the latest news and trends of precious metals, coins, currency, and more. Let's start the show.
Welcome back to the Numisphere. My name is Tyler O'Connor, and I am here with Jonathan Hawes of Rogue Island's Mint. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here. So, can you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, industry specific, I assume, or you want the whole gamut?
The whole shebang. Let's hear it all.
All right. I was born. No, I'm just kidding. So I started in the industry, meaning the coin industry, late 20s, probably about 15 years ago. Very traditional. Kind of came up around it when I was a kid. My grandfather was into coins. My dad was into coins. They had collections and stuff, and I was always kind of like into it as an amateur collector. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until my late 20s when I hated my job, which I think is not very uncommon.
Very relatable.
Working some dead-end jobs, wondering why I went to school for 4 years with that, that dead-end bachelor's degree and all that kind of stuff. I started buying and selling coins on the side as a way not only to make extra money, but to be into the hobby that I kind of had as a kid. And I realized that there was some money in it. And eventually that money started to be every bit as good as the money I was getting at that job I hated. And eventually I just took the leap. You say, I'm doing just as good. I feel if I pursue this full time, there's a legitimate career here. And I quit my job one day and opened up a brick and mortar shop in Millbury, Massachusetts. That hasn't been there in over 12 years now, probably, but that was the start, yeah. And did that for a few years. Again, very traditional, old world numismatics, U.S. numismatics, paper currency, bullion, all the kind of stuff you'd see in a
Sure.
coin shop. And 3 years in, a company that I did a lot of business with at the time, a precious metal refiner, came knocking and said, "Hey, we want to start buying and selling coins, and we want you to come work for us." And it was one of those decisions where it's like, well, you go into business for yourself, I think, to escape the corporate culture or to be your own, you're
working for anybody
to be
else.
the decision maker, right? And you get kind of spoiled by that in a lot of ways. As hard as the work as being your own boss is, there's a lot of benefit as well. And so
there's the sense of freedom. Right?
Yeah.
It's definitely more stress, more work, but
yeah,
you're
I think
your
you
own
get
boss.
used to it too. I think it's one of those things. It's tough to put the genie back in the bottle.
Yep.
When you don't answer to anybody, and then you have to answer to somebody again. But it was a very good opportunity with the way it was presented to me, and so I thought about it and decided to do it. And so I sold the business, went to work for them, was there for 8 years. But during the course of that time, I saw the industry really shifting and changing. In the sense of there were more options out there. I was a very traditional, like I said, numismatic coin shop. Sure. And we didn't do a lot with modern material or brand new material, even on the bullion side. And we didn't carry, the latest kookaburras or the latest, South African Krugerrands or things like that. And so as I was growing the coin side with this new company, I realized, hey, there's a lot more out there, and there's a lot of things that are new to the market that people are kind of like, hey, they're interested. And some of it was very bullion based. It was very, spot plus, and like, look at all these different fancy things we can do to it now. It's not just another eagle, it's this or it's this, and customers would get excited about it. And then some of it started to progress into modern collectibles, and I kind of fell in love with that stuff over that time that I was there, and really shifted my focus.
And that shift was around when? Like
It was
2016, 17?
Yeah, so I think it was the heaviest probably in 17, 18. I think that I kind of was learning about it in 2015, 2016. My first year there was 2014, and we were very traditional. We were trying to get it off the ground. And it wasn't a numismatic thing because they were a refinery. They wanted to sell bullion. Basically,
Right. It's more about the metal.
Well, yeah. They had a customer base that was already doing refining, and those customers wanted to take back, product on their refining outturn. So, but it was something they weren't as familiar with, and they just wanted somebody that kind of knew that side of the business. So it started off very bullion oriented, but once we realized the customers had an appetite for other things, you immediately, you start to jump on those opportunities because especially if your competitors aren't doing that same thing. So it was probably by 2018, 2019, right before COVID, those 2 years, is when we really started to get big into carrying a lot of like World Mint products that weren't just your basic bullion line. And then, by the time COVID hit, we were in the right business at the right time at that point, I think. And the rest is history. I mean, I shouldn't say the rest is history, but eventually, the allure of being the business owner, I could never get it out of my system. I never quite got it out of my system. And then, you combine that with some very fortuitous timing in terms of the company I was working for going through some changes. And it just was like, okay, I'm doing this again. I'm doing it. And
so you made the leap again.
Made the leap again. A little more forced this time. Okay. Yeah, there was the opportunity to do my own thing was always kind of hanging over my head, right? It was like, I've done it before. I know a lot more now than I knew before. You make all those rookie mistakes when you start a business for the first time, right? And I was like, okay, I got that out of my system. I also had 8 years to work for another company that let me, I wouldn't say be my own boss, that would be overstating it, but certainly they gave me a lot of leeway to grow that department without a lot of oversight. So it was kind of like a chance to grow and develop even further in the industry without having to worry about not having a safety net.
Right. Yeah, the support was there to make those choices.
Absolutely. And then, so it was always nagging in my head. It was always that little thought of like, man, I should do this again at some point. But when, my hand was forced a bit, but back in, would have been October of 21, the company was being sold, and there was other things going on. But, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is the time. If I'm going to go back to doing it for myself, I'm getting older, right? And it's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, I think I got at least one more in me to build it from scratch. I don't want to be doing that when I'm in my 50s. Like, it's just because of the toll it takes. I mean, you're working, especially at first. I mean, when you're starting it up,
24/7.
It's 24/7. And, having done it, I knew what you had to put into it. And I just said, I think I'm at the right moment. I could do it one more time. And that's where Rogues Island Mint came from. It was born from that moment. So
great. Well, I can tell you we definitely appreciate Rogues. No doubt.
Well, thank you. Geez, I didn't expect to get buttered up. No.
Well, hey, I got to keep you happy.
That's fair. No, you guys are great. I appreciate you having me down. By the way, you really do take good care of me.
Of course. We have to.
Yeah.
So, Rogues Island, what really inspired this place in the market that you have developed so uniquely?
Well, I think it comes back to if you're going to jump both feet into a new business again, you've got to examine the landscape of the industry that you're in and try to find a hole. What customer base is not being serviced or is not being serviced in a way that it could be. There's a lot of money there that's just not being tapped. The reasons are not really that relevant, although it could help to know why that is. And certainly when I looked around, I said, okay, we've got a lot of these new modern products that are coming from World Mints, places people would have heard of, and we'll use Perth or Royal Canadian or New Zealand Mint as examples of these types of places. And it's all very new. I don't want to get too... It's new, but it isn't. I mean, some of these mints have been doing this stuff for a while, but it was kind of new to the American audience. Like, you didn't see a lot of stuff outside of the bullion range, going back 10 years. I mean, were they doing it? Yeah, they were doing it. Not like they're doing it now. But
it was very limited.
But it was very limited. But as it started to grow, especially as we went through the pandemic, and we were like, oh, man, there's a lot of hunger for this. But what there isn't is there's not a way for the average dealer to get the product for their businesses. Like, and you're a perfect example of this, right? Yep. You run a brick and mortar coin business. You have an e-commerce coin business. You need product to sell. And in old numismatics, obviously that's going to come from buying collections. It may come from the public. It may come from auctions. You have to seek it out.
Right.
In modern, you don't have to seek it out in theory because they're making it brand new. You should just be able to order it. But you can't.
Well,
and
we're so small that these big mints
and,
really don't make a place for us.
It's not even, and don't, trust me, don't put yourself down. I mean, you guys are a very good sized coin business. It's just that mints don't want to deal with more than a few distributors. It's more of a business model than it is a looking down on the size of a particular business. The bigger the mint, the less people they want to distribute to. And the U.S. Mint's a perfect example, right? And we don't even do U.S. Mint products ourselves. It's not our niche, but there's several big companies that are kind of like the distributors. And when I realized that medium-size and smaller-size coin dealers in the U.S. had really no good access to any of this new product that was coming out, I was like, there's the hole. How do we become the person that can supply them? Because the companies that were big enough to buy direct from the manufacturers didn't want the medium and smaller size dealers to have access to the product because it would create their own competition.
Right.
They wanted to be the ones that had it, and if you wanted to buy it retail, you had to buy it from them. If they start wholesaling it to dealers like you can now have an e-commerce business.
Right.
You can post it up at the same prices that they can, and they're creating somebody
Their
competing
own
against
competition.
them. Yeah.
Yep.
And so they all wanted to have this little monopoly. And it made sense. They figured, how is anybody going to break up our monopoly? Because we're the only ones that are spending and have the enough buying power to go direct to these places. That was our first challenge. It was, how do we become somebody that can buy that bulk direct from the mints and supply it to the medium and smaller size dealers in the U.S. so that the mints will take us seriously, right? Like, because we're a brand new company. We don't have a track record.
Right.
And we looked at it as basically, let's make a union. I mean, it's not truly a union. There's no formal, board of directors or anything like that. But
it's a collective.
It was a collective. Better. It's probably even a better way to put it. And it was, again, very informal, but it was, let's get all the dealers that are interested in having this kind of product together. And let's basically give them access to everything that these mints are putting out. We can conglomerate those orders to create the buying power we need to go to the mints and say, listen, we can buy every bit as much as the big box retailers. Yep. What we do with it, how we distribute it, that's on us. But all they care about is seeing that big order, right?
Right.
Or it's not even always a big order. There's just certain commitment levels that you have to hit. You either have to spend a certain amount a year, or you have to commit to certain amounts of their flagship products. Mm-hmm. Everyone does it a little differently, but ultimately it's just about, you have to be big enough to make it worth their while. Right. And I said, how do we do that quickly? Because building up a business that can buy at that level would take a lot of time.
Absolutely.
So we said, well, this is going to be a win-win. It's going to be a win for the medium and smaller size dealers that can't go direct, because now they'll have access to wholesale pricing, and it'll be a win for us because we can accelerate our buying power with them very quickly. And that's kind of how it paid off. I mean, 2.5 years later, we are distributing, as far as I know, for more mints than anybody in the U.S., period. I mean, it's over 50 world mints that we carry their lineup of products. And we're only able to do that because we have this collective of dealers. We just do wholesale only. I don't know if I didn't say that earlier, but we're just a wholesale distribution company.
How many, we'll say, smaller dealers, medium dealers, do you deal with on average?
In North America right now, because we do a little bit of international, but North America right now, it's about 120 different companies that buy the product through us. And again, it's not to say that those companies are exclusively buy from us. It's not to say that some of them only buy a few things a year and other people buy a little of everything. But there's 120 dealers that get our distribution offers. And this is a funny story, honestly. I didn't know the answer to that exactly, because people sign up for accounts doesn't mean they're customers. They don't know, the customers go dormant, things change. But at the end of the year, we made sure that at the very least, everybody who bought at least one product from us in the year got a Christmas card. And so when I was talking to one of my employees, I said, I need you to go through and look at anybody who made at least one purchase and tell me how many Christmas cards I got to order. Because we had, cards made or whatever. Yeah. And she said, it's 122 or whatever. And I said, oh, okay. So now I know exactly how many active accounts there are, that at least bought something in 2023. But and then we have a handful of international accounts too, although that's a trickier, other than Canada. I mean, North America is easy, but obviously when you're dealing with world mints, it's a lot easier for them to try to find a source in those areas, Europe
Right.
or Asia or whatever. But
Yeah, to get things U.S. side and then distribute out again is a challenge.
yeah, we primarily, it's more for like exclusive products, things that they can't get over there that we have. Then it becomes a little more valuable to them, and that's something we've certainly that was phase 2. I mean, when you're first getting started, the last thing you're going to do is start developing products from scratch that you have to put a lot of cash flow into.
Yep.
But once you build that base of dealers and you've got product flowing in and out, the next best thing you could do is have product that you can't get anywhere else. It's a double-edged sword of your dealers that your customers, I call them my dealers, but they have access now to a product that even the big competition doesn't have, which is an advantage for them.
Absolutely.
And from our perspective, it creates an opportunity to grow that customer base, because if there are dealers out there who aren't dealing with us, who want that product, they have to come to us now.
Right,
Because
that's
it's
the
ours.
incentive.
That's the incentive. So it's kind of like a good way to reward our customer base with stuff that you won't see getting plastered all over, wherever, and at the same time drive traffic. So it's
And it's not just these large national sovereign mints
No.
or any of these big ones.
Not at all.
When you distribute products for garage mints,
absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely. In fact,
the
it's one of
line
my
is phenomenal.
It's one of my favorite things to do. On one end of the spectrum, you have like Royal Canadian and Perth, these mega world mints that have been around for 100 years, And on the other end, you have literally guys that started in their garage doing, with either doing hand pours, doing, buying a small press, buying a whatever, but they have good ideas.
Right.
And they have good quality, and, obviously we wait for them to be a little bit established.
Well, they have to have the ability to produce enough
bingo.
consistently to be able to provide that quality to your buyers.
Huge factor.
Yep.
That's the first thing we ask when guys come to us asking us to distribute their products is, what's your capacity? Because when we put out a product to the whole group of dealers, there's a chance that we're going to sell a lot. I mean, you never know for sure how something's going to resonate till you get it out there. But if it does sell a lot, do they have the capacity to fill those orders in a timely manner?
Right.
That's a huge thing. 'Cause some guys,
And that has definitely slowed things in the past. I can tell to my experience, there might be product that comes out and says, okay, we expect it February, but they couldn't just quite keep up enough, so it gets pushed a few weeks.
yeah. And unfortunately, delays are kind of commonplace across the whole industry.
Right. I mean, it's expected.
Yeah, even with the big mints. But the last thing you want is to overload a guy that's not ready. If a guy makes a quality product and he has some good ideas, that's step one. But if you hit him with a 400-piece order that's going to take him 4 months to fill, and he's drowning, you're not helping him. Like, you know what I mean, in a way. Yeah. So we usually let them get through the growing pains before we start offering any of their products. But that stuff is almost goes to the mission that we were talking about, because it's stuff that you're never going to see at big box stores, okay? And not only that, it's supporting another small business that fits in with what my dealer base is, right? So there's like a connection there where they go, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know, we can pump people's tires, if we want to, but somebody like a Locker Mint, for instance, he's been around a while. He's been around 5-6 years. He started in his garage, right? And he's somebody that came to us early on, and we had to make sure he was ready and everything like that. But the products were good. His turnaround times were fantastic. And the value was there, but he's also another small business. He's a family-owned business. His son works for him. His son's actually a really great hand pour guy, honestly. I've gone to his facility in Louisiana. I've seen his equipment.
Yeah, you guys did an event down there last year, right?
We did, yeah. So he hosts an event for industry people once a year. Well, it used to be in the spring. Now it's in the fall. They call it Locktoberfest. Yeah, because it's in October. And what a blast that was. I mean, he invites everybody to come see how everything's made. You can actually pull the hand press. You can pour stuff. Like, he lets you do that. And it's a bunch of guys that either are other silver pour or silver art type of businesses, or people like me that work with him in other capacities. And we all meet up there and talk biz, and what's the latest thing going on, and just fellowship and that kind of stuff. Nice. So that has a lot of sway, I think, when it comes to like what kind of products you want to carry. Right. If you know that story and you've met these guys, and that, the new product comes out, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna give that a shot. I want to support. Dave is the owner in this case, but it's not just him. There's so many guys on that other side of the spectrum. In that, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say like garage necessarily. I think hopefully a lot of them have outgrown that, but in terms of like old school U.S. manufacturing with a small crew,
Yep.
4 to 6 people, sometimes 10 people at most. Whether they're making pressed stuff with a. I mean, there's a guy that, no joke, makes incredible stuff. He bought the same presses that Scottsdale uses.
Oh, no kidding.
But he only bought one. Obviously he doesn't have the capacity. Right. Those are very expensive machines.
Yep.
But if you give him the right die work, artwork wise, and it's all, and that stuff's above my head how they do it on the computers and all that stuff. But if you give him the right file type, his stuff looks every bit as good. But he's just a guy with a couple employees, and a facility. But you want to support that. And again, I distribute for Scottsdale too. Nothing against Scottsdale.
Right.
Scottsdale's a monster. I mean, they're huge. They're cranking
they
out.
deal with countries.
1 million ounces a week. I don't know. I'm making that up, right?
Yeah.
And they're super nice guys. But it's just like we want to have the whole breadth of that because you won't find that from any other wholesale distribution network. I mean, you could sign up with different places and maybe get 5 or 6 mints worth of stuff offered to you, but you won't have the diversity of product. We want to have everything from a silver pour to an art bar to a colorized piece, a lot of that secondary market kind of stuff, to your staple mints, the bread and butter stuff, which I mentioned, like Perth and Royal Canadian and places like that, to your upscale, art mints that are doing legal tender in those bigger sizes, very, very, the European artistic high relief 3 ounce, this and that. We want to have all of that stuff because we feel like everybody has different customers at the end of the day. I don't know who your customers are. I don't know what their tastes are. If I can give you access to everything, not only can you fill what your customers like, but you have the opportunity to grow new avenues in your own market.
And develop those new customers.
Yeah, because you now have stuff available that maybe either you never thought of or didn't know existed or whatever the case might be.
Or you could be the only one in the area carrying that.
That too.
Yep.
That too. I think our biggest benefit, is to a lot of the true, I call them brick and mortar or show circuit type guys, because you can have unique stuff in your store, in your case, that your competitors in the room aren't going to have.
Absolutely.
And even, it's so funny too, because like I'll go to a few shows where we're the supplier for a couple of the people there, right? And even when you go to those people's tables and you look in their cases, they're drastically different in terms of what they've chosen to carry.
Right.
So it's like, you may buy stuff from us, and there may be 2 other dealers that buy stuff from us, and you could all be set up in the same row. And you look in your case, and the stuff that you bought from us is different than what he bought. It's different than the other guy. And, some of them may have focused on price points. They may have focused on product types. They may have focused on themes. And so and I think it's important to state that, like, the reason you can do that is because we are offering, on average, 5 to 7 new coins or products every day of the year. It's an enormous amount of stuff.
Yep.
So you can tailor it to what works for you. It's not like, oh, I kind of have to buy this because it's the only thing I'm going to see for the next 3 days.
Right.
Not at all. If something comes out and you're like, yeah, it's not going to work for me, just wait half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's every day. I check my email all day long, and the diversity of products, the availability of products, we really get to fine-tune it for what works for our business, our model, and our customers.
And that's why we need a big dealer base, because in order to make any particular product successful and to get bulk orders, the average product is only bought by 10 to 20 dealers out of 120. But it's a different 10 to 20 dealers on each product.
Right.
So that's what you need to make this whole system work. We're just here to marry 2 people that don't want to work together, basically. The mints don't want to deal with hundreds of smaller guys that they have to do the legwork on. And a lot of dealers don't want to deal with mints, especially overseas. There's a lot of complexity to that.
Yeah, it's a headache.
It's a headache. There's currency conversions. Trust me, there's customs.
VAT tax,
don't even get me involved in all that stuff. There's delays. They want money up front. A lot of dealers don't, hey, listen, we're in a cash flow business.
Right.
And that's a turnoff.
Yeah, you have to pay for it months in advance.
In some cases, yeah. And then when it gets delayed, how mad are you then, right? And then you get hit with a customs bill you weren't expecting because somebody declared it wrong. And, that's my job. My job is to streamline that so that you never have to deal with that part of it.
Right.
And the mints don't have to deal with hundreds of dealers, which they don't have the logistical capacity to do. So we marry the 2 together. That was the hole in the market that we saw, And that's a really, really long way of answering that question.
I mean, it makes sense, though, because there was nothing there before. And, I mean, obviously, as dealers, we had the opportunity to get it with some of these nationals that do the bullion stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which are great, and they have their purpose. But that, in today's market, where the average buyer has kind of shifted to that 35 to 50-year-old, and we were touching a little bit earlier on this, is that it's not necessarily about buying Eagles or Britannias or the basic bullion anymore, is that you're trying to tap into nostalgia.
Yeah.
And having that connection to get to the mints that have the licenses to do that type of stuff, whether that's Star Wars, Disney, or the likes, that's a new opportunity and a new market that really didn't exist as much before.
And it's such a different mentality from the buyer. So this is great. I'm glad you're called Numisphere, by the way. Here's why. I think there's a lot of different wedges in the Numisphere.
Absolutely.
And obviously, the biggest wedges are traditional numismatics, exonumia, currency, those types of things. And then bullion is a big wedge. And
substantial.
True bullion buyers are more concerned about the investment than about the specific theme of the product necessarily. Their goal is to buy metals at a reasonable price that leaves them not a lot of premium to where they can sell it potentially when the price goes up. Even if they're holding long term, they want to be able to have the lowest costs over the price of the metal, the lowest premiums they can get. That's a traditional stacking mentality, or
they
even
want to
just
keep the cost average.
Physical metal investor. The stuff that we sell, and just to be clear, we really don't deal in bullion. I mean, we deal in some what we call premium bullion, which is one-off type coins or licensed type coins that are still priced based on the spot. I mean, they're still spot plus or whatever, but they tend to be quite a bit higher than a government round, or certainly than a like a Buffalo round or something like that. So what's interesting is that the mentality behind that collector, a lot of people think, it's certainly nostalgia. It's certainly what's tugging at them, emotionally when they see it. But it's also, they don't want to lose money either. I mean, anybody who's buying this type of product wants to think that they're making a good investment.
Right, and the hope is that over time, those collectibles will grow in value.
This is the best analogy I can use, and I truly believe this. Traditional numismatics is like investing in traditional stocks. Modern collectibles is like crypto, okay? There's much, much bigger swings, much more volatility, but you can also, hit home runs much quicker or potentially buy a dud much more easily, right?
I was just going to say, there's a lot of those duds.
Absolutely. So, and I could go into a million examples, but literally in a given month, there could be 3, 4, 5 coins that are so hot right out of the mint press, the day they're made, that they're over allocated, right? Meaning the mint gets way more demand than the amount of mintage there is.
Right.
They, at that point, obviously, they cut back the orders from distributors like myself who are saying, hey, I need 500. And they're saying, well, I can't give you 500. I can give you 300. I can give you 250 because we got so much demand.
Right.
We get those. We have more demand from our dealer base than what we can fill. So you guys get allocated. And it kind of trickles downstream that way. But the interesting thing is some of that product sells for 2, 4, 5, 6 times the retail within 1 to 3 months, like that crazy of a spike. Right. And it's not a fake number where you can't liquidate it. You can easily liquidate it at those prices, either as a dealer who has one in stock or as a customer who bought one, either by, just going back to your dealer or going, putting it on eBay or doing whatever. The money's real. And what I like about that, like I said, it's almost like it is a very crypto analogy there, right? Where there's a lot of very, spiky things. If you get good at picking the right things as a retail buyer, you can do something you can't do in regular numismatics. This is not to put down regular numismatics. That regular numismatics have held value for hundreds of years. Right. Even before the U.S. existed, there was coin collectors in Europe and Asia that were buying medieval
it's the hobby
coins.
of kings.
Yeah, ancient
Been
coins,
that way
whatever.
forever.
So that is a tried and true way to put your money in something that's going to maintain or increase in value over time. But it's more like the stock market. It's a slower crawl, right? And with the modern collectible, if the right thing resonates with a certain customer base, it all has a very limited mintage.
Thank you for listening to the Numosphere podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Numosphere. Until next time.